Before we begin with this video, we want to recognize that this will not be a one-size-fits-all approach to the regathering of our church communities. That said, here is a brief overview of what to expect and how to prepare as we begin the slow process of returning to church. The first question many will have is, who can come back to church? Well, just as before, all are invited. However, some will be asked to stay home. Congregations of all sizes should consider providing a list of questions for the congregation to answer before entering the building. Those questions are, have you been diagnosed with the COVID-19 virus? Has anyone in your household or close contacts been diagnosed with the COVID-19 virus? Do you have a cough? Do you have or have you had fever in the last 24 hours? If the answer is yes to any one of those questions, then they should not attend in-house worship. Another key question that congregations will be asking is, how many people can worship? Well, the key here is going to be the number 25, as in 25% of the occupancy rate of the worship space. So if you don't know that number, now is a really good time to figure it out, because this 25% number will be your key in phase one. So how does this work? Well, it's pretty simple. Let's say your worship space has an occupancy rate of 275. 25% of that is 68. So no more than 68 people can be in the worship space during worship. And then safe distancing must be practiced in all seating. So that means everyone must be seated 6 feet apart. It's a good idea to mark where people can sit in the sanctuary. Now, this will look and feel odd, but then again, preaching to a screen and not seeing one another for 2 months felt and looked odd, didn't it? This might also mean adding more worship opportunities when the number of worshipers exceeds the gathering limitations. What about masks? Well, the short answer is they are required by everyone. Masks are extremely important according to epidemiologists, the CDC, and the state guidelines. The pastor and leaders of the church must set an example. In phase one, masks must be worn by all clergy and laity while in the building. This should also be communicated to the congregation with a reminder to bring a mask. Ushers, also masked, should have spare masks available for guests and those who arrive without masks. Masks are designed to protect. Another protection method that is very important is hand sanitizer and soap. You will need a lot of it. Hand sanitizer should be available for every single person that is entering the space, and all will need to sanitize their hands upon entering. Pastors are not required to remain masked while at the pulpit or preaching, just as long as they are sufficiently distanced and separated to safely lead worship. What about communion? Well, the short answer here is we're not there yet. It is recommended that all congregations suspend the practice of Holy Communion until distancing restrictions are lifted. What about restrooms? Well, restrooms are breeding grounds, unfortunately, for the coronavirus, and for that matter, all viruses. Dr. Greg Poland is the infectious disease expert at the Mayo Clinic, and he says that the public restroom is the most dangerous place you can go in public for health reasons. That's why the recommendation is to clean them as often as possible and as strongly as you can. How often? Well, you need to clean the restroom after each and every single use, and you should also limit the number of people going in and out. What about the offering? Text to give should be set up in all churches. The United Methodist Foundation of Louisiana offers this free of charge, and it's very simple to set up. However, if you must collect money or checks, ushers will need to do so following guidelines for safe social distancing, wearing gloves and a mask. Best bet? Have a spot where folks can drop off a check. Here are some other tips. Shorten your worship service. Shortening your worship service keeps the exposure level at a minimum. No paper, Because viruses can survive on paper and hard surfaces for hours, the use of hymnals and pew Bibles is discouraged. That's why it's a good idea to consider removing all hymnals, Bibles, and papers from the pews. Wait a minute, did you just say remove the Bible? Yes, we said remove the pew Bible, but remember, most everyone has a Bible on their phone, and if someone needs a Bible, make sure to disinfect after each use. Some of you may be seeing all of this and saying to yourself, this seems difficult. In some ways, it is. Things are just not going to return to what they were before COVID-19. That is a reality that must be embraced and communicated, most especially by our pastoral leadership. Remember, this is also hopefully just a season. But now more than ever, we must continue our task of imagining, adapting, and developing new ways of being the church. This is just a brief overview. There are more guidelines and more suggestions found on our website, and we will continue to post those as we move forward. United Methodists and the Louisiana Conference have done and continue to do amazing work during this crisis. You have held nothing sacred but the mission. You have proclaimed and lived a resurrection hope in a dark and uncertain time. And you have kept the connection alive and well like never before. The reopening of church should be done intentionally, but also with careful consideration given to our local context, and we must always prioritize the protection of those most vulnerable to the virus. Our return to public worship is not and never should be based on our own comfort, desires, or preferences. To be faithful, we are called to be willing to do what is best for others, even when it requires us to make sacrifices.